more abnormalities, distortions, and others have appeared. And that was just in Chapter 7, never mind the rest of this. Let's go over the lore of all of that. First we have the hurting teddy bear. This is clearly an aberration of the happy teddy bear. A teddy bear that in Lobotomy Corporation would kill those that worked on it twice in succession. So cycling through the agents was necessary to prevent this. While in Library of Ruina, it would build up power while attacking and defending to deliver a devastating attack on the target, where the cost would be reduced each time it was used, so it was best to defeat it before it could use this on a regular basis. This was the Heh level abnormality. The hurting teddy bear is a Tef level. While both can deliver lethal hugs, there is a difference. While the happy teddy bear is based on an abandoned toy, one that's seeking out its owner and is hurt by their abandonment, and so deliver deadly hugs to its victims to prevent them from running away, the hurting teddy bear is based on an abused toy. Basically what would happen if the movies Ted and Child's Play were blended together. It looks like this toy was used as a voodoo doll, considering the amount of nails in it. This abnormality is weak to piercing, wrath, and envy, but is strong against blunt, gloom, and pride. It uses a mix of physical damage types, but primarily inflicts bleed and nails. Nails being a status more commonly seen inflicted by the N-Corp identities, as in the Psycho division that fanatically hunts down heretics, or those with any cybernetics. Nails inflicts 1 bleed and count by the amount of nails in them. This abnormality can also inflict Curse, which inflicts 1 attack power down, 1 defense down, 2 offense level down, and 2 defense level down for each of the status effects. Attacks can also inflict attachment on a target, which allows it to gain clash power relative to the amount of this. And if the target has more negative effects, then it has faint memories. 10 is gained when staggered. Then it will use the Sad Embrace attack. A target that will only be stopped if the abnormality is staggered, but this one won't damage the target. It'll weaken itself, stagger itself, and fully heal the target's SP. With its attacks, it can also inflict Fragile, if the clash is won, along with lower defense. Some attacks will prioritize those with the least status elements. There's one attack that will only heal half as much damage if the clash is lost, although this will consume all attachment on the target and raise stagger threshold by the amount consumed. This is only if all fighting it has attachments. When at 30% HP, it will receive 15 offense level down instead of 3 attachment on the next turn, and will have 1 less base power for every 3 negative effects on the target, up to maximum 3. On turn 4, which can be cancelled if the abnormality is staggered before this, it looks at this with a sad expression. Several sharp nails were impaling its body. If they chose to hug the teddy bear and the check passed, the bear plush would be soothed despite the nails digging into the chosen skin, where it would cause 10 HP damage, but heal 30 SP and lower the hurting teddy bear's clash power by 1 every turn for the rest of the battle. If the check fails, it's the same outcome mostly, except the chosen receives 30 HP damage. If they looked away, the nails were likely seen as too threatening. None wanted to get close, and this emotionally hurts the bear plush. It made the damned dozen feel so bad that they all received 15 SP damage. Rodia wrote this report. She was glad that it wasn't gross looking. It just looked creepy instead. It looks like a soft, plushy and cutesy teddy bear with burst seams everywhere and a bunch of nails protruding in and out of it. Who was asking for hugs? She asked who would want to hug it. Once they played along, it became more aggressive. She considered ignoring it completely, to not play its games, and just press the offensive, to keep attacking. The strategy that Dante sometimes suggests, attacking them without caution, minimizing defense. She saw it as plausible, asking Dante if they can try that strategy. Dante agreed that they should try it. Ishmael saw that the claw attacks were more painful than expected, trying a different approach. Massault saw complete neglect may provoke anger. Rodia asked about all playing with it together next time. Later on, Rodia gave the feedback on the strategy. Playing with it together wasn't the solution. It got rougher until it suddenly hugged all of them. Like a huge bear hug, and the nails inside its body started stabbing them in the process. It was awful to get stabbed. It was the worst sensation. They can't neglect it. They can't play with it, so she suspected that it was to do with the teddy bear's mood. She asked the others if they felt it too, an oddly sad feeling, every time they played with it. That feeling seemed to diminish a little, so they have to not play with it too much, but not completely neglect it. Yes, not completely neglect it. Just the right amount. Yisang saw it as ill-resting for his heart at the sight of the faint sorrow, but he knew well that it was an abnormality. Heathcliff reasoned that they just need to kick its at the right moment. Rodia understood the right amount of entertainment may be permitted. But a careless approach to battle can't be tolerated. Sinclair asked what the right amount was. Then, when it started running at her all aggressive to hug her again, she thought that it was going to be her death. But it wasn't. It hugged her so tightly, but she felt so comfy and warm. It didn't hurt at all. Even its sharp nails turned cushy and sponge-like, seeing it as trying to repay them for playing with it. After all that, it just sat there, not doing anything. Like it was satisfied. Like it was done with playtime. They then took it down. It was an abnormality that happened to be standing in their way. But she didn't like doing it. It was cute. Sinclair saw that writing stuff like that, Faust might come to chastise her about that. Faust denies that she does that. She only gives rational warnings against emotional attachment of abnormalities that doesn't take into account the definition and the particularities of such. Or rather, of each of them. Roger told her to go easy on her, let her dote on it after a series of gross subjects. Faust would put a measure in place to have less gross subjects assigned to her for her observation logging duty. Next we have the Rose Hunter. This rose-headed abnormality, riding a horse made of vines and roses for eyes, is a head-level aberration of Snow White's apple, much like the WAP-level aberration Ebony Queen's apple, based on the Brothers Grimm fairy tale Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. Now, while Snow White's apple, which is a WAP level, and is based on the apple that would poison Snow White, the Ebony Queen's apple being based on the Queen, The Rose Hunter is based on the huntsman who was ordered by the Queen to kill Snow White, who in the source material was not able to go through with it. The Rose Hunter is hunting an apple that will become a princess, much like what Snow White's apple is, as both this abnormality and the apple being hunted by the Rose Hunter was cursed and thrown away. In the Lobotomy Corporation, there's a large chance of the equip-off counter, what keeps that abnormality in containment, going down when either a normal or bad work result happens. When it reaches 0, then she'll appear in a random hallway or small room and sprout vines, which will slow down all that is causing them and deal black damage over time, as long as she's in that room. Once the vines cover it completely, she'll move on to the next room until she's taken out. The Ebony Queen's apple, rather, slows down the enemy with her roots, which also strengthens her. Specifically her attack power, where both effects disappear when the roots are killed. As for fighting it, it's weak to slash, wrath, lust and pride, but strong to pierce, sloth and gloom. It primarily inflicts rupture, and deals a mix of slash and pierce, and gains power of the amount of rupture on the target, and those with barb lasso. Not only enhance its own damage to targets, although staggered targets will also receive more damage, it also increased the shield that it has when blocking. Some attacks either prioritize those with the least SP or have barbed lasso status. Those without this will receive half damage. As for the barbed lasso attack, it will have 5 more clash power if the difference between the speed of one and the other is more. Specifically, the speed of the target is less than the speed of the attack. It also gains more speed equal to the barbed lassos on the field, so they need to be destroyed as quickly as possible. When it's at 40% HP, it will inflict rupture equal to each target's speed, while inflicting 2 barbed lasso and will gain 2 offense up and defense down each turn, up to a maximum of 12. It also has a 20% chance to inflict 1 more rupture count on a target that has rupture immediately before an attack, and when inflicting barbed lasso, it generates bind on that target. Honglu wrote this report, seeing it as a hunter with a rose growing on top of his head, arriving like the wind, riding a handsome steed with roses blooming from its eyes. He was so surprised, because when they first met, he greeted him by throwing that lasso at him. He kept tugging at it, when pulling away from everyone, seeing it as troublesome. This would have been bad if Ryushu hadn't chopped the lasso, which could have been, it could be cut, as he'd seen ropes that couldn't be broken. Thankfully, this lasso wasn't like that, as it was easy enough to break the Rose Hunter's ropes. Sinclair understood that it didn't hesitate to bind everyone, asking why he kept whipping him and just him. Faust understood this to mean that he prefers ensnaring and whipping targets with psychological weaknesses, which is why Sinclair was a priority target. Honglu saw that Sinclair had very delicate sensibilities, like a sugar sculpture. Sinclair thanked him for that compliment, although he wasn't honest about that. Ryushu said SSOFT, or Sugar Sculpture of Fragile Temperament. Later on in that battle, Honglu saw that the more people that had been bound, the faster the Rose Hunter got, asking if he should be slower, if he had more to carry, asking if the lassoed people were making the horse excited, or maybe he had to hurry somewhere with so many people tied to himself, asking why it might be. Shouldn't homeward journeys be an opportunity to see more things, to experience as much as possible? Going too fast with tunnel vision might cause you to miss things. Heathcliff saw it as understandable to get impatient when going back. Always disagreed with this. There's no need to delay the return journey. The faster the better. Honglu asked why Heathcliff wanted to go back to that manor. Ishmael saw this as a good question. Why rush back, as whoever sent that letter wasn't even there? This caused Heathcliff to write something that was scribbled in violent anger. Clearly he was resisting the urge to stab someone with the pen he was using. Dante advised stopping bringing that sensitive subject up. As the battle progressed, Honglu observed that the Rose Hunter was a very obsessive gentleman. He couldn't avoid the lassos, despite his best efforts to do so. Each time he threw them, he grew more accurate. He even threw two at the same time. But this was at the cost of him being less able to avoid their attacks, as he kept throwing his lassos, asking why didn't he run off once he had all of them in snares. Suspecting that capture wasn't the intention, perhaps this was to wear them down as soon as possible so that he could leave there. But if that was the case, why did he try to capture them with that thorny lasso? He wanted to ask him if they met him again. Massault suspected that it was in the pursuit of the apple, based on the encounter in the mirror dungeon. Honglu understood this to mean that it was desperately searching for something. He knew a few people like that back where he came from, so he understood. Sinclair reminded him that Jia Sichun, his younger sister, mentioned that his family was looking for him. Honglu believed that was because they must really miss him. Glad for that. Yeah, they're looking for you because they want to try and kill you. The main reason why she allied with you was because you suck at being treacherous, so she doesn't have to worry about you stabbing her in the back. Next we have corroded entities. These are those trapped in the fathoms of ego within La Mancha Land, the prison for those blood fiends that wouldn't conform to First Kindred Don Quixote's vision. Those desperate enough to survive, they found the EGO extracted from the 400 Roses abnormality, which they were ill-prepared to wield, resulting in EGO corrosion. They inflict bleed on those they hit. Yes, on those they hit, they also deal 5% of the HP damage to a random target. They can heal themselves, and depending on the amount healed, it can result in offense, defense, and even attack power being buffed. They heal by 15% of the damage dealt, if the target has bleed, although this is just for the blood bags and blood fiends. There were at least 2 humans that corroded. Camille of Sunk West and Paula of Zwei West. They retained their skills alongside the dealing 5% random target HP damage and healing based on the damage dealt, although Camille generates poise with his attacks, gaining coin power depending on the amount. More damage on critical hit, and if the duel is declared on the target, while one attack grants free haste if the clash wins, it can cause free bind if the clash loses, and dodging grants 1 haste per turn. Yes, dodging grants 1 haste next turn, and he automatically heals 7 SP and gains haste, equal to the poise divided by 4 next turn, up to 3. Paula focuses on increased defense, which increases base power depending on how much is there. but defense buffs are reduced if the clash loses, and bind is inflicted on the enemy if the clash wins. She can give a defense boost to Camille with one attack, and the block grants a shield based on the defense buffs on her. The corroded blood bags are weakest to lust, weak to blunt, gluttony and gloom, while strong against slash, sloth and envy. Blood fiends are even stronger than blood bags against envy. The other resistances are the same. Camille is weak to slash, wrath, lust and gluttony, but is strong against pierce, pride, and to a lesser extent, sloth. Paula is weak to piercing, wrath, lust, and gluttony, but is strong against blunt, pride, and to a lesser extent, sloth. Masson wrote this report, seeing no meaningful distinguishing features that was identified when comparing that to the sub-entities of other abnormalities. While hinging on the host's original appearance, the bodies were covered in vines and a flower blooming on their heads. Corrosion removed rationality and caused a yearning for blood. But communication was possible with them, with corroded humans. They act similarly to ravenous blood fiends, and maintaining their will was more difficult compared to blood fiends, but he had little to go on. With the blood fiends, the long starvation period made them less likely to be rationalized with. He observed that the others noted that the corroded entities attacked using roses and vines, while also using the same combat methods that they used before they corroded. There is a noticeable difference between how they fought compared to before corrosion. They were surrounded by lights and siphoned blood lost from them, which they used to heal themselves, while also channeling part of it to a separate entity. Faust suspected that it's likely the abnormality itself. Masson compared the corroded to blood bags. Sinclair asked what would happen when a corroded blood fiend attempted to create a kindred or blood bag. Masson didn't see them as attempting that. Upon killing them, small roses were observed on the bodies. They feed on blood and would likely wither. Faust observed that it's unlikely to act as a typical flower would. Masson would correct the report if his statement was disproved. Next we have Distorted Honenheim. Honenheim was chief researcher of the extraction department of Limbus Company, or LCE. Although he was this by default, due to Yi Sang and Faust being part of the Damned Dozen. He was a former Lobotomy Corporation researcher, a wing remnant after the fall of Lobotomy Corporation, who had unresolved survivor's guilt. He was found by Limbus Company and operated more or less as before, although he didn't just study the abnormalities, he studied distortions and peccatula as well. He even maintained the lack of standards regarding the safety of those working on them. During the long overdue checkup, he had a monolith distort him, and Dante, with the assistance of the Damned Dozen, had to resolve this distortion. Honenheim understood that he was denying his own human emotions, and in the end, it was remembered that Johann, his assistant that resembled Heathcliff, let him escape, which led him to the conclusion that he wished that he was more like Heathcliff, much to the annoyance of Ishmael, as she didn't want Heathcliff to be like Heathcliff. He was weak, ironically, to wrath, but also to gluttony, but strong against sloth, gloom, and envy. His attacks inflicted tremor, and he gained poise, so an increased chance of critical damage, and pushing the stagger point forward. Poise can also be consumed to increase final power of an attack. Every 3 turns he will block, which will be more effective if he has enough poise, and more poise will be gained. Well, more than expected if there's shield HP remaining. Every 4 turns, we'll have an unblockable attack that will hit everyone, which increases in damage and final power based on how much poise was consumed. Half of it, to be more precise. It will also reduce the poise count by half, if he loses the clash. If he didn't take HP damage before that turn, critical hits were guaranteed, otherwise 80% less damage would be dealt. Yes. That unbreakable attack will deal 80% less damage. All will tremor burst, though, and tremor counts will go down by 3. He also applies Subject of Observation to all, which grants him poise potency accounts based on how much there is. Every 10 of this inflicts 1 more tremor potency accounts, up to 3. As for other passives, this changes based on what was asked every 4 turns. He gains poise when he's hit and damages his enemies, although if this is weakened, gaining poise can reduce Subject of Observation by 3 if there's 15 or more. He has a shield equal to 30% of missing HP, up to 15% maximum HP. But if asked a question that weakens this can be reduced to 15% of missing HP, up to a maximum of 5% maximum HP. Both are weak to Rupture and Burn. He can siphon 10% SP from 3 that have higher SP than him. But if he's panicked, it doesn't activate. And if a question weakens this, he'll lose 15% SP and siphon 5 SP from 3 that have an SP higher than him, which cancels it out. Yes, if he panics, next turn his SP resets to 0. As for the report, Heathcliff was writing this one, although he asked why he had to write it. Well, likely because he was his assistant during the checkup. He didn't feel like writing that. He wanted someone else to do this, had he known. Yes, had he known this, he wouldn't have accepted being his assistant. He saw him as much a pain in the as he was as a human. His outfit didn't change much, but his neck stretched out of broccoli with eyes, and he had shadowy hand-like things all over his outfits. He was quite a challenge. He shot lasers out of his eyes. He was absorbing and siphoning energy, observing them through that whole mess, seeing that old habits died hard, even as a distortion. Once he observed them enough, his attacks hurt more, like he's analyzing their weaknesses. Still as irritatingly eloquent as ever, while pompous. He didn't think that he was that much of a He felt solidarity between the researchers, like when he was part of the Dead Rabbits Syndicate, admitting that even they don't have his suggestion, well, they don't take his suggestions seriously. Yet he listens to those suggestions no matter how stupid. Even when he shuts them down after. But at least he listens before he explains why others are wrong, rather than pretend that he didn't say anything. He then focused on taking him down and bringing him back. Now, this wasn't what Gregor expected, seeing how fond he was of Honenheim, believing that they wouldn't get on. Roger saw that they'd been too hard on him, wanting to listen to him more from now on. Ishmael asks if she's the one that always ignores his inputs. Rodia apparently did so because Dante told her to. The main reason why they seemed like, well, the assistants seem like Backstreet Syndicate members is because the researchers were likely recruited from the Backstreets, much like Honenheim did when he was with Lobotomy Corporation. Next, it's the sleeping bag of a bygone day. This is possibly an aberration of the shelter from the 27th of March, an abnormality that is only dangerous for everyone else that spends too long within it. Well, to put it more simply, it's safe for whoever's inside it, but that's because the outside is made more unsafe. Yes, whoever's inside is completely safe and healthy. In the Lobotomy Corporation, it heals both body and mind of the one working on it, but it can make abnormalities breach their containment, and at worst cause a complete disaster within any facility with it in it. So any researching it had best not be within it too long. Now, this might be similar in the case of the sleeping bag of a bygone age, where they can use it to recover, but they better not remain in it for too long, as it's likely to have an adverse effect on those nearby. Either that, or it might have some kind of overdose side effects, considering that it's capable of oxygenating the air around it. As for the name of this Abnormalities EGO, Foracalgia, that's a medical term, English failing me again, referring to chest pains, which is likely what the added oxygen is for, to assist in breathing. Now, this abnormality isn't weak or strong against any physical damage, but it is weak to lust and strong against sloth, gloom, and pride. It will use attacks that gather poise, which increases final power if there's enough of it, up to a maximum 5. It will also use an unbreakable attack with fixed targets, which increases clash power based on the poise potency and count on that target. Although speed will be fixed to 1, and 6 poise potency and count is granted to all, which is also siphoned on targets if the clash loses, only 1/3 of that will be siphoned, and after that a multi-target attack will be made, which halves its own poise potency if the clash loses. And after the attack, will halve both poise, potency and count, and in this case only 1/3 of it will be unbreakable. It also results in damage being multiplied by the poise potency on critical hits. Upon reaching 40% or less HP, the great skull rears its head with a loud creaking noise, making an eerie, echoing cackle. The calmed air vibrates with explosive energy, and the skull was preparing a powerful attack, yet it overstrained itself. The body was cracking and wavering, giving them an opening. There was a choice: attack the opening on the body or wait for it to attack. If they chose to attack the body, they dashed into the opening and struck the body, which made the torso crack wider, opening into a crevice. Dante felt a pair of eyes peering from the darkness past the bones. This weakened its physical resistance at the cost of it dealing 100% more critical damage. If they chose to wait, they noticed the endless stream of exhalation. The true threat wasn't the skeleton, but that figure. They maintained their defenses, and for that turn, all gained 2 protection. Then an unbreakable multi-target attack will be delivered. Although if the Clash loses, it will reduce damage by 75%. If the Clash wins, it will bind by 2 and inflict fragile by 2. The damage multiplier percentage will be poise potency plus poise counts on a critical hit. If the body part is broken, then it will gain 2 fragile at the start of the turn. It also automatically gains 10 poise potency and count at the start of each turn. If it has less than that at the turn end, 2% of the core's maximum HP is consumed from the head part to gain 5 poise count and potency. Critical hit is, the chance of it is multiplied by 1.5 and will consume more potency and count to inflict more critical hit damage. Although each time it takes damage and takes a hit, 1 potency is lost, and it loses 1 potency count if the attack is unopposed. The poise potency and count can't drop below 5, however, and when the body part is broken, half of the poise potency and count is halved to regenerate it. And if the person part is broken, it will have weaker physical resistance. Urtis did this report as ordered by Dante around 10:40 hours. It assumed the form of a gigantic skull, which made it easily identifiable. It was rather intimidating. It had a support that looked like a spine surrounded by ribs. She suspected that she was making a large leap in logic. The rest of the shape is not unlike human bone structure. She says this while there's heavy breathing from it. They initially attempted to exploit this based on the similarity, but the extendable spine and its morphing of its ribs into arm or wing-like forms resulted in that plan being abandoned. Tactics based on normal understanding aren't always useful. But it wasn't entirely wasted, as they identified a dark entity within that body, which might either be its true form or core. Its means of aggression will primarily prioritize attacks of physical nature using its bone structures, but she lacks evidence to confirm this. She'll continue to observe. Roger criticized her being by the book, asking if she brings her whole template. Urtis confirmed this, as this was expected from those serving Dante. Roger told her to take some time to breathe, as there's a distracting amount of heavy breathing in that report. Urtis denied that she was struggling to breathe, accusing Sinclair of this, and he denied this, telling her that it was coming from the skull. Yisang saw that it breathed, even though it lacks a respiratory system. At around 1100 hours, they engaged the abnormality. It first attempted to strike them physically using its bones, which was expected. It used its spine to maul them with its jaws. The most unexpected attack was that it let out a breath, which delivered a level of shock and air pressure that dealt significant damage to all caught in it. She lacked confidence in their reliability, but decreasing numbers can be fatal to them. It needed a high level of strategizing to defeat. They needed to pressure it greatly. She also noted that it released a large amount of air by exhaling, which improved the poise of whoever breathed it in, enhancing their attacks. The shadow within it mobilized at this point, attempting to steal back the air from those that had it. This couldn't be stopped. To stop losing this air, they had to resist it to the best of their abilities, as its attacks were highly augmented once a large enough volume of air was inhaled. Preventing this would help greatly. Faust made it clear that recognition of heavy breathing was disabled in that report to make it more legible. It wasn't removed from the previous report to enhance the sense of realism. Sinclair asked Gregor if he was okay after the shadowy figure dragged him in. Gregor thought that he was being torn limb from limb. Sometime after, Ortis observed that after losing its ribs, it prepared a fatal attack, which also, well, while it weakened its defenses, this did make things harder for them. While not destroying the ribs would prolong the battle, it would save them the trouble of working on countermeasures against highly dangerous attacks. Dante needed to make the strategic judgment call regarding this, having faith in them to decide this, based on its behaviors. Dante thanked her. Roger detected Dante's lack of enthusiasm, and Dante denied this. Ortis warned her that alienation tactic won't work on driving them apart. Dante didn't see that as what she was trying to do. They appreciated these detailed reports. Now for Der Fußschuss. And sorry if I've butchered the pronunciation. This is clearly an aberration of Der Freischuss, as both had a weapon granted to them by the devil, which was a bargain that would bite them in the rear by killing those that mattered to them. Die Freischütz did so by the 7th bullets, even making it clear that would happen. Now, the name it's German for the curse shooter. This aberration, This one wields a Lee Enfield bolt-action rifle that was converted into a shotgun. Yes, a very British weapon. And this effect was likely due to the magic circles multiplying the bullets that go through them, which was seen when the fell bullet EGO is used by Heathcliff and Yi Sang. Although Yi Sang's use is similar to the original configuration of a long-range weapon. As for the environment of this battle, it's based on the Smoke War, hinting that it might have originated from that time, likely from one that got too close to an active monolith and distorted, then eventually turned into an abnormality. It would certainly fit the theme, considering that it summons old G-Corps soldiers, biomimetic augmented troops that fought in the conflicts. And if reminded of his love via the pendant that he had, it would cause his shot to backfire. Stigmatized targets have minimum and maximum speed set to 1 and has 300 HP shield. The abnormality also causes up to 30% more damage if the speed difference is faster than the target, and up to 30% less if it's slower. Minimum speed values are increased by up to 4 depending on the poise on it. When the targeting settings are 0, it's 5 when the old G-Corps soldiers are summoned. It tells them to stop. It doesn't remember anymore. It can't even recall if they're real to begin with. but they still remember their loved ones. It'll blast their skulls apart, every single one of them. There was an old pendant hanging from its neck. And when someone brings that up and a check occurs, and it passes, the Chosen points it out and it opens it, and then this made it grab the gun. It didn't want to remember them, the ones he loved, telling them to stop smiling, to get away from him and shut up. It kept shooting, but the shots were weaker. And it gained 3 fragile and 2 damage down. If the check failed, it decided not to do so and shoot at them with a grin. This granted it 100 shield and 2 clash power. Again, physical damage isn't really something to be focused on, as it does the same regardless. It's weak to gloom and pride, but strong against sloth and to a lesser extent wrath and gluttony. It gathers poise with each attack and gains final power with enough of it. Sinking is inflicted on hit and bleed on critical hit with some attacks, and additionally with others. It can also target multiple targets. There's also no attack. Yes. Also an attack which attacks twice on a critical hit. Another which halves poise on it if the clash loses and gains 4 paralyze. When it reaches 75% HP or less. After that turn, it will summon all G-Corp troops and target them to damage the enemy that is faced by it. If the target is defeated, this causes it to readjust for that turn and cancels that attack. If the target doesn't have the stigmatized status, it will gain 1 paralyze and 3 fragile. If it does, and if it's defeated, it will gain 10 poise and lower the SP of all enemies by 15. That target also receives 100% more damage. Heathcliff wrote this report and he was fine about them making audio logs, although he can't understand how it can record a word that he was saying in that racket, as that crazy won't stop blasting his gun in their direction. He can't hear himself think. He expected to deal with the noise after he was done. But he got on with it. The abnormality had smoke or fire burning from the head, and was dressed as a soldier. Heathcliff listened to what he was saying, like he was in some kind of war. He was going for their heads, which was understandable, as that would be best to make the enemy dead for good. The abnormality didn't seem that complicated. Heathcliff could clearly see who he was aiming for. Then he was shot dead. Roger got in his case for his last words. Faust saw that the audio to text seems functional. Heathcliff thought that he knocked them down when they clashed, asking what happened. Faust told him that once targeted, the bullets will always strike the target regardless of the outcome of their clash. Don Quixote asked why didn't he simply evade the bullets. Heathcliff asked her back if she thought that he got shot in the face on purpose. Then he also noticed that the abnormality hit everyone around him when it killed him. He remembered Gregor calling what he was using to be a shotgun, making up for short range with a wider bullet spread that can hit more than one enemy. He also went for the closest one first. It wasn't as damaging when hit from a distance. They need to make sure that their heads were intact through the fight. Then, the abnormality summoned biomimetic soldiers. He'll focus on killing the one with the gun regardless. which also ended badly, as those were Heathcliff's last words that time, at least according to Roger. Sinclair saw that he was summoning allies now, just to kill them. Gregor recognized them as old G-Corp soldiers. One of them was the head manager that they killed in District 4. Faust told him that it's the Refraction Railway, it's a reconstruction of what was necessary for the abnormality. Gregor did not like that he got dragged into another war, even in death. He couldn't get away from this. Later on, Heathcliff asked if they saw how it acted. When they told him to check the pendants, it made him scream in rage and lost the will to fight. It drained the motivation out of him. The shots weren't as good and the defenses weakened. Asking why he wore it, if he didn't want to remember someone. While it makes things easier for them, it wasn't something that he liked and told Faust to shut it. She's reminded him enough. He's just an abnormality and their stories aren't worth listening to. It's easier said than done. He didn't know when he said it. He still remembered the one that he loved, and then he reminded them of how he blew him to red paste early on in the fight. His memory was fine. That's not so bad. Sinclair asked if he liked the feeling of his head being blown off. Heathcliff surprisingly confirmed this. Otis reminded him that Dante suffers for this as well. Heathcliff was offended that she thinks that she likes watching... Well, he likes watching Dante suffer. Don Quixote saw that he had a habit of finding joy in others' suffering. Heathcliff told her that she's getting it all wrong, asking Dante if they know what he's talking about. Dante did, but there was something written in the report, but it was hastily erased. Heathcliff decided to talk about it during their next consultation. Finally, we have 400 roses. Now, those who suffered from EGO corrosion from this abnormalities, EGO, when they're ill-equipped to use it, were encountered in Chapter 7, in the Dungeon of the Fathoms, where for most of it, they had to make do without Don Quixote, or Second Kindred Sancho as she was at that time. This abnormality, which looks like an experiment of a certain Batman villain, was apparently a reference to Sheridan Le Fan's 1872 Gothic novella Carmilla, which was one of the earliest works of vampire fiction. The first EGO gift, Carmilla, was named after the female vampire. The second EGO gift, Melaka, was the pseudonym that she used in that story. Sorry, it's Mirkala. Well, the EGO yearning Mirkala is a reference to Carmilla's human self. Well, the identity that she used to pass for human, Countess Mirkala Karnstein. The yearning being the desire to yearn for sympathy and consent from her victims, all to increase her enjoyment. Now, 400 roses is also possibly an aberration of Nosferatu, the abnormality which has a connection to the origin of blood fiends, based on what little is known about their origins, implied to be one of the few natural abnormalities. Now, resistances aren't a factor here, so let's not talk about that. This is definitely a bleed-heavy abnormality, as all of its attacks inflict bleed potency and count, some of the attacks being unbreakable. Bleed can also increase the final power in one case, and in a different attack, it can make the one that it hits more fragile to lust and also activate bleed. It also has multi-target attacks. One can activate bleed and the other can increase damage dealt at the cost of fragility. Another unbreakable attack can activate bleed and consume the Blood Feast. It can block, which appears when it has 100 or more Blood Feast. It consumes 100 Blood Feast to heal by what was consumed. And for every 20 Blood Feast consumed, 1 offense level up is gained the next turn. Another Blood Feast consuming multi-target attack heals by Blood Feast consumed, but if the clash loses, it becomes weaker. And if 30 or less Blood Feast is consumed, 2 fragiles gain next turn. It becomes more aggressive when either 500 or more Blood Feast is consumed or it's at 60% less HP or less, depending on which comes first. If 9 turns have passed since it appeared, then from that turn onwards, 1 offense level is gained for every turn after that, up to 10. It also increases Blood Feast by the collective bleed received by the enemy. It will heal based on the damage dealt, but it won't happen if the head is either staggered or destroyed, and when HP is healed, it gains a maximum of 10 offense level up and 10 defense level down. Yes, increased damage at the cost of being able to take it. Status ailments stack to a maximum of 50, including variations of it. It inflicts 1 bleed count per one bleed count per identity per turn. If the body part is targeted, up to 10 defense level down is gained for every 100 Blood Feast is consumed, and up to 5 healing boosts for every 200. Every 3 turns, an event occurs. Where it yearns for blood, it guzzles it up, glistening in crimson, but it's not enough. It glowers at them. If the damned doesn't ignore them, this makes it frustrated and it charged at them, which led to, it having 1 more attack power up, and 1 fragile for 3 turns. If they fed it a little blood, it was satisfied and it was less aggressive, which resulted in it gaining 2 attack power down and 2 protection, at the cost of all those fighting it losing 10% HP. Yes, it's good to have healing EGO equipped for this. If a moderate amount of blood was fed to it, it gained 3 attack power down and 3 protection, at the cost of all fighting it losing 15% HP. If Blood Feast was not at 0, and they clean up the blood, this made it even angrier. While it halved the Blood Feast, it resulted in 2 attack power up for 3 turns and 2 fragile. Don Quixote was doing this report, and this was distracting for her as there was a suffocating smell of blood. She saw that it looked like an average rose at first, but it had eyes between each petal. They had looks that was familiar, full of desire, much like her blood-starved family. It had no desire to slay or harm, it just yearned for blood. Not seeing it as always like this, she understood that she's not in any position to pity it. She asked if she could strike it with its vines, or rather at its vines, seeing it as no risk to them. The red blood-drenched petals most likely utilize its blood to attack them. They need to watch out for that. She struggled to word her observations to naturally convey this to Dante. Then she realized that it was already recording, asking Faust if she could redo this. Faust told her that it was possible if there was a good enough reason for it. Don Quixote admitted that she made a mistake due to not being experienced with vocal recording. Faust denied this due to insufficient cause. The record will remain as it is. Don Quixote made several dozen requests to redo this, which was denied by Faust. Later on in the battle, Don Quixote saw this as a tough battle. It was desperate to wound them. It made use of spilled blood for the purpose of attacking them with it. It might be not recommended to feed it blood, yet she had an idea, as it was docile while feeding. While it might make it harder to kill, it would protect them when fighting it, asking if this was an intelligent plan. Ishmael confirmed that it's harder to kill the more blood it feasts on. Sinclair confirmed this, asking if they can not feed it blood and make it easier. Massault saw it as more aggressive when not feeding. Gregor understood that they need to feed it the right amount of blood. Farther into the battle, they took Gregor's suggestion and saw that the head of that rose was the weakness. Destroy the head, it can't drink blood as well. The body wasn't as vulnerable, glad not to suffer wounds rupturing with every strike against its body. She can then add that one to the list of the vanquished. Then she asked Faust, after the battle was over, could she edit the first record. Faust saw her persistent, and yet she denied it for the 26th time. Ishmael saw it as pretty good. It was more an actual report than the rest. Roger liked the casual reports. She was bored by Ishmael or Faust's reports. They were too dry for her. Ishmael took offense to her lack of respect for professionalism, seeing Don Quixote as, unusually good with her reports. Don Quixote failed to understand the two. Her report style has always been consistent. Roger asked if she's going to pretend it never happened. Gregor told her that ignoring this won't make it go away, even with her memory being restored. Well, that's everything in this season. Time to wait till the next one, along with 2 other things before this season is over. Until next time, hail the rabbit!